Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Want to see you all at the this past 4th of July, but hope you all had a good celebration. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask Heidi for the roll call.
Yes, Treasurer Diosa.
Here.
Jean Rondo.
Here.
Mark Carrillo.
Here.
Michael Cicerone.
Here.
Joseph Cadiga.
Here.
Matthew Howard.
Here.
Yen Lee. Here. Brendan McCabe. Present. William Murray.
Here.
Claire Newell.
Here.
Andrew Nada.
Here.
Alan Palazzo.
Here.
Sandra Paquette.
Here.
Dr. Laura Shahi notified us that she would not be here today. Michael Tui.
Here.
Treasurer, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I will seek approval of the draft meeting minutes and the executive session minutes of June 11th, 2025 of the retirement board meeting. So moved. Second. Any comments or edits? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion approved. Hi, we'll ask you, Heidi, if you have any comments.
Yes, I have a few updates. First of all, Frank noted at the last meeting that we were close to signing a contract for our IT audit with Compass IT compliance. So I can report now that we have indeed signed that contract and the project is underway. Secondly, there were some new provisions affecting the retirement system that were passed in the last legislative session. We'll be providing a summary for members in the next Compass and on the website in the next few days. Probably the most substantial item that affects the most number of people would be the post-retirement for teachers. There were some changes to the extension, mainly regarding some new requirements on who is permitted to exceed the limit and some new reporting requirements for employers. And our wage and contributions team is working to inform our employers so they know what they need to give us there. Also at the last board meeting, the status of the excess revenue transfer was raised. So the fiscal year 2026 budget as enacted did not include the provision to suspend the transfer for this year. And so, and I can also report that ERSRI already has received the 21.6 million. It came in on June 27th. And then finally, regarding the governance committee and the search for the executive director, Andrew Nana will have an update for the board later in this meeting. Were there any additional items?
Someone within our group had raised a question regarding the percentage funding of the pension fund. And we're probably putting out, it's around 63-64%. There's a group called equitable.org, and they list the percent funding for the states, and they have Rhode Island listed at 70, I believe it's 77.8%. And some people have raised questions about that. So I was wondering if we could get clarification either now or at a later date, because that's a huge delta.
Yeah, I mean, I would suspect, not having read the article, that they possibly are aggregating the MERS amount into that because their funding is over 88% for MERS, and so that might explain it, but we can look further into what their methodology is.
Because I need to calm
Right.
the crowd out there.
Right.
And that's a huge delta, and I said, why aren't we getting an enhanced retirement benefit now?
Right, so we'll look into that and we'll report that.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions for Heidi? Seeing none, thank you, Heidi, for our update. I will seek approval of the June 2025 pensions as presented by ERSRI.
So
moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? No nays, so moved. Or Patrick.
Thank you, Treasurer. So there's two reports in the packet. No substantive updates on filed cases right now. One thing I do want to bring to the board's attention was that there was a administrative appeal hearing for a Pina Alfiero. She was the petitioner. She had filed an appeal. We went to a hearing before a hearing officer. The hearing officer did issue a decision in favor of executive directors, upholding the executive director's decision. After he issued that decision, the petitioner decided to withdraw her appeal. So that's why that decision is not going to come before the board for approval, of the hearing officer's decision because she has withdrawn it already. So I just want to make that note. It's not, obviously that's not a filed case, so it doesn't show up in your reports. It was still at the administrative appeal hearing. But that's what happened with that case.
Any questions for Patrick? Please.
I have a question regarding the West Warwick case.
Yes.
Is the funding with regard to the legal defense for that, is that coming out of the West Warwick fund or is it coming out of the overall? All right, ERSRI fund?
So I think that's probably a question for the executive director, how our fees are paid. I think it's the general fund dedicated for legal fees.
That's my understanding, but I can look into that for
Sure.
details.
Thank you.
Where does the money for the general fund for legal fees come out of? Where does that
I
money
think
come from?
it's a line item.
It's a line item out of the
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
The budget chair.
So I don't think the general fund should be paying for the community's issue.
Yeah.
That was outstanding prior to.
Yeah, no, I get what you're
Part of the
going from, yeah.
fund.
Yeah, but we built in our own budget.
Yeah.
Any other questions from Patrick? Good, thank you, Patrick. We'll now move on to committee reports. I'll call on Claire.
Okay, the disability committee met on July 2nd and we recommend the following. We recommend passage of item number 2.
Need to recuse.
Recusal,
Let the record reflect that. Mike is recusing on item number 2.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. And then we recommend passage on items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
I'd like discussion on 8, please.
Alright, so we'll open it up for.
But why don't we vote on 1 through?
Okay, one.
Rest
One,
of seven,
one,
8,
three,
and then
four,
you
five,
wait
six,
separate.
Okay.
So I'll move approval of all of them except 8.
Okay, so
And two.
and 2.
Two's
Well,
already been voted on.
I thought we just did. 2.
Two's already been voted on.
Yeah.
Alright, so all in favor?
Aye.
No nays, no nays? Okay. Now we're taking on number 8.
All right, so my concern with number 8. I feel as though it's my opinion that this is gonna end up just like the Coventry case that we had recently under the same legislation. I'm kind of getting the sense that there's a feeling on the committee that they don't like this law. And it's not up to us to decide whether or not the law is fair or whether or not we like the law. The law is the law, and that's how we disseminate pension dollars. You have 2 doctors that this person saw that says that this man is disabled and it's due to his job. And then you have the one doctor who ironically always does this and basically builds a case for the committee to say, well, we have clear and convincing evidence that this wasn't job related. He cites a lot of things that it could have been, contributing factors, this and that. That's not a definitive, clear and convincing argument to say what, my opinion is which one of these caused that and how do you prove it? That's clear and convincing evidence that something else besides his job caused this problem, right? Although if you can't prove that, it's presumed to be job related. That's what the statute says. The other issue I have with that is they're basing the fact that this man is allegedly obese based on a BMI. I did my BMI calculation just for, ha-has the other day. It says I'm overweight. I'm 5'11", 210 pounds. All right, so I'm borderline morbidly obese according to that standard as well. So I think that's laughable that we're using something like an outdated metrics like a BMI, which by the way, the military is getting away from because they were putting people out for fitness that were just muscular. They were doing caliper tests and then allowing them to pass through based on their caliper test, not just a BMI, because it's an unrealistic matrix, right? So to use that as a reason to, as a contributing factor to this man's, poor health, I feel that's a bit of a stretch. I don't know the man very well. I've seen him in passing because he works for the same fire department as me. I can assure you, if this goes to appeal and this man's sitting in front of you, nobody on that committee is going to tell me that this man is obese. I promise you that. Like I said, my concern is that we're going to waste money going to workman's comp court yet again over a case that we can't win, just for the sake of argument. You get what I'm saying? You know, we talk a lot about fiduciary responsibility in this room. Let's exercise some. Let's use common sense here. I don't think we're gonna be able to meet the clear and convincing standard here. It's gonna go through the appeal process, you know, if it goes that way, then it's gonna end up at workman's comp. We're gonna end up paying this guy anyways, and we're gonna be wasting money in the long run. You know, that's my 2 cents on it. So.
So on the committee, in terms of the review, on this particular matter, I think we've got two paths, right? So one path is we continue this matter. I don't have the information with me from that meeting, and we come back and we debrief the entire board on our process in terms of the elements of that particular case. Some of which Matt mentioned, some that you mentioned, I don't recall being a primary driver of the decision. If I recall correctly, in this particular matter, we really relied heavily on the committee's medical interpretation of the records that were provided and the IMEs. And in this case, we felt that there was enough ambiguity that we could defend it. Now, clearly, any defense of clear and convincing is difficult, right? I will say even a clear case, it's difficult to achieve that. But I think we felt strongly in terms of the vote that was taken on this case. So we can either discuss what we have available with the committee, the few committee members that are here, and talk about it, or I would recommend we just continue the matter and we come back if the board is uncomfortable with the recommendation of the disability committee to come back and really present that information to the full board based on our opinion.
So what I'm hearing is we can either continue it or just move on. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll note that this is the first stage, so no matter what the committee does, if the committee if the board adopts the recommendation of the committee, Mr. Mata has the option to appeal that and have a full hearing before the committee, at which point the committee would make another determination on the reconsideration, which would have to come back to this board for approval again. So just in terms of the process, as Andy noted, certainly you more than one option is to continue it, to have a more fulsome discussion with members of the committee so that they're prepared. Another option is to act on it, understanding that Mr. Mata does have still administrative remedies available to him at this time.
Just a point of clarification. So the hearing officers, it was 2-1? One?
Medical.
There's no hearing officer at this point.
No, the IMEs, two of the IME doctors
Okay,
said
that's fine.
it was caused by his job.
And then
Dr.
no-
Mayer
only
said,
one
Dr.
no.
Dr. Mayer said it wasn't. He said it was all these other contributing risk factors, including a BMI of 31.56, calling him obese.
Right.
The lack of hypertension, you know, it says he was a smoker. I don't know if the guy's ever smoked or not in my life, but I would be willing to bet probably not. Seems like a pretty healthy dude. And you know, in the absence of a hypertension diagnosis included with all these other risk factors,
Right.
that's how he's saying that one of those caused it instead of the job.
So that's what you're questioning.
Right, so
now,
my
as
thing
far
is
as
this
us
though,
Moving.
right, but my thing is this, how is that clear and convincing evidence? You know, Andy just used the word ambiguity. Ambiguity is not evidence. Ambiguity is an open range of things, right? So how can we say, you know, listen, if he gets a cold, I can say, well, he must have gotten it at Walmart or Stop and Shop.
He doesn't go to Walmart.
Well, but I'm just saying, like, you know, I can throw arbitrary things out as well that are plausible. But can I prove any of it?
I also think they can appeal and have a full hearing, so that's.
And I agree with you. I'm just,
Yeah, Treasurer, I will say just to follow Patrick's comment, I think the committee has been very open to having applicants appeal. And we have actually more actively, I think in recent years, revised
Right.
our opinion on an issue when they're represented by counsel, when they provide additional information that's not reflected in the record. As voluminous as the record is, doesn't include everything. So a lot of times it's not conclusive when they're sitting here, but I tell you, we have pondered that, we have made other adjustments, and so I think that would be an appropriate step.
So I would recommend if we just move so that it gets a full hearing. So I'll take a motion if there is one.
I'll make the motion.
Motion second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
no.
No.
That should be a roll call vote.
Roll call?
Yeah.
The roll call.
Could I just ask a question before we vote, because I'm still unclear on this. If we vote to just keep going, this automatically means that we approve
No.
No.
Item 8.
Right.
But
So I think the motion is a motion to approve the decision of the disability committee, which would be approving his ordinary disability and denying the accidental disability. Mr. Mata then has the option to appeal that for a rehearing before the disability committee. At which point he has the option to come in, because on the first level, they don't come in or present anything. When they appeal it for reconsideration, they can come in and present to the committee. The committee will hear from them, can ask the applicant questions. There's a back and forth where they get some more information. At that point in time, the committee would make another decision, whether to approve or deny, and that would also come back to the board for consideration.
I just feel if someone has brought up sufficient reason for us to question it, to automatically just go along as if we do approve. Prior to this man making an appeal, I don't know if I'm totally comfortable with that. But that is an opinion of one.
You can vote to that effect you know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
Sir?
If we make him come in front of us, then that's his only avenue of appeal, right?
So he'll come in front of the disability committee to make his presentation, then that decision of the disability committee comes back to this board, okay? If it's still not in his favor, he has the option then to appeal that to the workers' compensation court on a trial de novo.
Where he can't come back in front of us.
Not after that second rehearing, no.
Now, mind you, this is all at personal cost out of his pocket for attorney.
Yeah, I know.
Right, and very often, I was involved in special ed, and I know we always said to the parents, oh, you can always go for an appeal. It was so costly, and most of the time the parents did not win the appeal, so I don't see where it would be a problem for him to go again in view of the, you know,
So he has one,
differences.
he has one more bite at the apple with the committee. And then whatever their decision is comes before us again. So he has one more of those, but he still has to pay for an attorney to represent.
Right, and that's what I'm not comfortable with.
Right.
And
We
just,
should follow the process. That's my. Where I lean in the most. And. You guys get the full hearing. To review it there.
Not everybody comes back with a lawyer either.
True. On the appeal?
Yeah.
No.
You'd be crazy not to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, those who represent themselves are fools there.
You don't have to have legal representation.
No, that's an optional we have.
Okay.
That's poor option for the,
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
well, we need the
There was a motion and a second. There was a no by Matt. Is anyone?
Someone has.
We're gonna
That's a
go
roll.
Yeah,
Shadia,
Yes.
Jean Rondo.
Yes.
Mark Rulla.
yes.
Michael Cicerone.
No,
Okay, Joseph Cadiga,
Yes.
Matthew Howard,
No.
Yen Lee. No. Donna McCabe. Yes. William Murray,
Yes.
Claire Newell,
yes.
Andrew Nada,
yes.
Alan Palazzo,
No.
Sandra Paquette,
No,
Michael Tui.
Yes.
And we have 9 yeses and 5 nos, so the motion passes.
All right, we have come to the end of the meeting, it's the quickest meeting ever.
The one more.
Oh, yeah, we have you.
Oh, we can adjourn if you'd like. That's fine.
You mark that
I'm
down.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Mark that down.
Now he's gonna make sure it's the longest meeting.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I didn't know I blended in, so.
It's got a date, that's why.
All right, well, please, Andy, update us on the search.
Mr. Chairman, one more item for the legal report on the side. At the last board meeting, we had an issue regarding a pension. And issues were raised with regard to the current law did not allow and I'm not gonna get into specifics, us to rule on a partial pension because of the current law. And I would propose that the council for the next meeting actually come up with draft legislation for you to submit or a member of the public to submit regarding updating Rhode Island general laws to ensure that that issue doesn't come up again. I think you are aware of the case I was talking about. And if there's a problem there, we need to correct it. And I think Pat would be more than capable of drafting
Right.
legislation.
We've already
Yeah,
been
yes.
working on this, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. All right.
I just wanted to make sure that was covered.
Great.
So now,
Thank you, Treasurer. So an additional update regarding the efforts of the governance committee associated with the search process for a new executive director. Received an update from CBIZ late last night. Since the last report, we've seen about a doubling in the number of candidates, which is fantastic. So we're up to 32 candidates. CBIZ is really conducting an extensive vetting process early on. So they're interviewing candidates, they're filling out questionnaires, they're vetting through and having conversations and a number of other things where they're culling the group for us initially, but clearly every candidate that's applied is still a viable candidate. They feel just generally based on their criteria out of the 32, they feel they have 15 that are viable in terms of their professional standing and education and experience. They have 3 candidates that they're recommending so far to the committee to be directly interviewed. They are processing another 4 candidates for potential interview before the committee in the coming weeks. As part of that conversation, they said there has been minimal discussion associated with compensation. But based on follow-up from our last meeting, a number of members we commented on, the potential concerns associated with the existing salary structure the state has in place. But that being said, we did not have this conversation with Kim Bradney, so we have not compensated CBIZ to conduct their own independent salary study for the position. That being said, they provided significant information based on like positions that they have seen across the country. In their opinion, the range without any organizational structure applied to it in terms of size and scope, it ranged from about 187 to about 295. And they felt that once they applied some organizational criteria from ERSRI, it really put it probably more in the 185 to 250 range. So they're starting to bring that range a little bit tighter. So they recommended at this point, the 185 to 220, which is what we've advertised, is appropriate and for us to work through the process. So I think at this point, it has not been a hindrance in terms of the number of applications since we just saw it doubling, which I think it was initially a concern when they were coming in slow, but seems to be moving forward. They're waiting for an additional 7 questionnaires from candidates that just applied. And they're continuing to have significant outreach. So our greatest challenge today is probably just corralling our committee. So we're at a point in the process where we can't really move forward without a committee member because we're going to start to talk about candidates and vetting in executive session as the governance committee as we start to work that pool down. So we were unable to find a date this week or next week for that meeting. So we're now looking between the 21st and the 25th for that initial meeting. I think the process will still move fairly quickly, but the committee, in terms of their vetting of candidates, I think it really is going to depend on the individual candidates and the quality of that pool based on how quickly we come out of that process with a recommendation of 1 or more candidates that are interviewed by the full board. So we just don't know yet because we haven't had that process. The other thing that'll occur at our next governance meeting is a pretty involved conversation regarding interview questions and interview structure and what that's going to look like. So there'll be some public elements in the public part of the meeting and some certain elements with after notice is provided to the candidates, which Heidi and I have been talking about along with Kim for discussion on them personally in executive session. We're not expecting any candidate to say, sure, I'm happy to talk about it in public. I think at this early stage in the process, everybody wants to maintain their confidentiality. That may change a little bit later. So we're still progressing. I think at this point, Heidi, is there a board meeting planned in August?
There is
There
not.
is not. Okay.
We want in August, so we would need to call one once necessary.
So I think that'll be something, depending how quickly the committee comes out of that process in July, whether we're prepared with one standout candidate or two or three candidates, and whether or not treasurer of the committee, you feel the committee should get together in August to move the process or wait till September. So we should know more in the next couple of weeks on that,
Okay.
and we can circle back with you.
Please.
Maybe. But that's all I have to report, but happy to answer any other questions. I've got a number of committee members here as well.
Bill,
Just a comment, going through this executive, you and I have talked a little bit, I'm on the Ryback board and we just hired a year ago, new executive director. So your 220, 225, 230 is, we judged it compared it against other boards, state boards.
Yes,
And I think you're in a comfortable position there.
hope so.
Well, I know what you deal, we didn't have to deal with, you know, the state saying, you know, so much. But it is a position that, we compared it against other boards. And what I'm saying is, those executive directors are all within that block. So I don't think, I think any higher than that is really, we'll move it up to a different position. So just a comment.
I'd like to just thank Andy for all his work on this. He's really been spearheading this very well. He's been putting in a lot of
Absolutely.
legwork, so thank you.
Yeah.
It's not
Good
easy,
job.
that's for sure. Good job.
any other questions for Andy? No, okay. Any other new business or any further comments on any other items?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
That's what I get, guy.
Yeah.
Talk to you.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, there's no